I mean, this was written like a couple days ago, the beginning of this piece for 2 pianos, and it came to me because I played the first 7 notes on the piano and then figured, I can work with that. And, you know, the first 7 notes being something like that.
And from those 7 notes?
From those 7 notes, I decided to make it.
At the very beginning, you had better have a very powerful grasp of the ambition of the project for yourself and for the client, and what will that be? How will the two be brought together? It's so complicated.
It's not an intellectual, conscious kind of thought process. Like, what am I going to create today? It's not like that at all.
You've got kind of the beginning of the idea, and you're sketching, and you're thinking about, and you're playing with materials, 'cause you're the most kind of creatively open then.
You haven't encountered any obstacles yet.
The theme I want to explore here, and right on my very first page of notes, I say, these are the themes I'm exploring: depth, the void, the abyss, saying goodbye forever, leaving the known behind, endless exploration without a purpose.
You never really start with where you want to end. You start somewhere sideways.
You know, you're building a machine that is going to have to run on its own. So early on, you're very much in charge, and you're building these parts. And then there's that Dr. Frankenstein moment when you connect the 2 wires and see if the thing starts to lurch into motion.
He's alive! Alive!
When I was a kid, you sit around the kitchen table and no one would listen to you, and you couldn't get anyone to listen to you. And then now it's like, people have to listen to me. Yeah, they paid to listen to me. Take that, Sister Sarah, who would not listen to me at the dinner table.
My sister is a pathologist, though I like to introduce her as, this is my sister Sarah. She cuts up the dead into chunks. And
we had an exchange student come from Italy, and she brought a whole slew of Italian Vogues that I ate them like they were delicious candy. I was just looking through every page and obsessed with it. And my parents would always buy really interesting books for me, like the Comme des Garçons book that came out in like 1986. I think I had it when I was 8.
Yeah, how many first graders are reading about like Issey Miyake and Comme des Garçons?
And Yves Saint Laurent.
Yeah.
One day, I wanted to make a rocket ship. I was in Chicago, I was 7 years old, and I wanted to make a rocket ship. I mean, like really make a rocket ship. Because I'd just gotten one of those Estes rockets, and I thought, boy, with enough of those, I could fly around the John Hancock building. Okay, let's get this in the works. And I asked my father, who was really creative, I want to build a rocket ship. And he said, okay, just let me know what you need and when you want to get started, and we'll get going on it. I was like, thanks, okay. You're on the roster, Dad, as one of the engineers. And I remember telling my mom I'm going to build a rocket, and she was more like, well, how are you going to do that? And kind of killing the dream. And I thought, wow. And she made me think that you can't really fly around Chicago in a rocket ship, Neville. And that bummed me out. But what it was not to quench the dream, but rather to infuse a sense of pragmatism to a dream.
Like, the first article about me came out in 2003. I would have been 12, I think.
There's a composer studying at New York's renowned Juilliard School who some say is the greatest talent to come along in 200 years.
I can't really tell when I started thinking about music seriously, because as far as I know, I've always been thinking about music seriously.
Okay, good. Let's go from here.
I was born in West Virginia, and I kind of did my formative years in Ohio. I definitely wasn't encouraged to dance. I mean, in my neighborhood, dancing wasn't the first occupational choice.
Like almost every male writer that I know, I wanted first to be a rock star. So I think I felt some kind of creative urge, maybe around, age 13. And that was my first thought, was how I would channel it was by playing guitar. And I quickly discovered, that there's this something called talent, that, because I played with people who had it, and I could see that they could hear a song, they could play it, they could make it their own. And I was like incredibly mechanical. And at the same time, I was reading really intensely and started to write fiction. And there I suddenly felt like, oh, this must be how these other musicians feel when they play. I know what to do. I know the next move.
I just always thought that this idea of style kind of always influenced my life in some way. I remember like visually seeing covers of movies when I was a kid. I remember seeing the cover of Sid and Nancy and being like intrigued by this, kind of darker style that the people had in the movie. I wasn't even allowed to see the movie again. I was in like first grade. So I couldn't see it. I could just see kind of like the visual cover and how people looked.
We strayed in high school. We started to be a little bit more unfocused, and I can remember my parents kind of like, pretending to crack the whip and be like, you need to think about your future. But I think that they were different. They were very quirky, and they were liberal, and they were interested in things outside of the box, whatever. And so I think that the reflexive, like, oh no, you won't be a musician and not go to college, you loser, was actually their way of just saying, I'm worried about you, but I believe in you, and I think you're gonna be fine. And eventually they were totally on board.
Both my parents were academics when I grew up, mathematicians. Neither was particularly mechanically adept or minded, so I didn't grow up in an environment where I would create things with my hands, right? And it wasn't until I was in graduate school when I started doing experiments that I realized, this is really fun to create new things like this.
Get draft brewed Blatz, Milwaukee's favorite premium beer, now at local prices. Syracuse defeated St. Louis 135-101. Wilt Chamberlain got only 35 points, but Philadelphia beat New York 129-116. And this is Barney Lee for Blatz. I'll see you tomorrow night, and that's tonight's Sports Picture.
My dad was a sports announcer on radio and TV, so I didn't get much of an exposure to science or invention or technology. In fact, I guess I'd say my interest in it grew out of a hunger for understanding how the mechanical, how the physical world worked.
I grew up in Pakistan where hardly anything is thrown away. Like the newspaper will be used to make paper bags. And that's why I think I don't feel any weirdness in using somebody else's material if they're throwing it out, because I think I can make it into something else, you know.
No, my father was, he was a salesman, but he really tried so much to understand what I was doing. He dropped me off every Saturday in an architect's firm, an architect's office, and let me just sit in that office. The architect let me just copy other drawings he did and sometimes show me to do something. It was fine with me, because I sure as hell didn't want to go to summer camp.
My dad is a dermatologist, but he's always been really goofy and kind of ridiculous. Like he has a website developed for this non-existent product. It's very confusing. There's no time to explain it right now. But it has to do with a bar of wood that he's selling as a bar of soap. You can check it out on your own. Soapalternatives.com.
I was in the engineering school at Cornell studying computer science, and I was learning how to program along with all these other people who learned how to program and so on. And I think a lot of them went to the career fair, junior and senior year, and like went off to get a job at Microsoft, went off to get a job at Sun, or went off to get a job at some hedge fund, or whatever they did. And thinking about what I wanted in my life and what made me happy and all those kinds of questions, I thought about that through college. Couldn't you just kind of come off the rails? Couldn't you kind of go do your own thing, like the Unabomber, like Thoreau,
I definitely wanted to be a dancer. Well, maybe I'll be an astronaut. I wanted to be Luke Skywalker. I was working at various restaurants in LA. Maybe I should stay down this path of doing medical products. I got 2 positions open in Switzerland to teach. Did stand-up comedy. Maybe I should make a book. My role on General Hospital was pizza boy. This is not working out, and I really wanted to work in film. Only because that felt like that was the destiny I had created for myself.
In school, I played sports in school, and I sculpted and I painted. So dance seemed to me to be the perfect union of those things. Sculpture, painting, sports, it was all those things into one. And this is the best bonus of all. There were like ridiculously beautiful women there. I mean, they lived there. And so that made it fun.
I said to myself, this is what I want to do for a living, and nothing's going to stop me. And I'm going to work every day at it until I get the job that I want. So when all my friends were at fraternity parties, I was up in the library reading microfilm, finding old Newsweeks and Chicago Tribunes and Washington Posts and studying the cartoons, late at night. And then I'd go back to my dorm room and I'd practice drawing.
That was like 19 or something. I did finish school, and at the same time I was doing stand-up in Minneapolis. And yeah, I think I was saying to myself that I was a comedian. I don't know if I told anybody else that, because I think that would have been kind of stressful to tell somebody else. And why tell anybody else? I mean, either they know I am or they don't. What business is of theirs?
We started writing songs when we were like 14 years old, and I tried to focus on the positives of what we were doing back then. I try not to be that horrible self-deprecating, like abusive old version of me yelling at the younger version of me, like, why, God, why did you do it like this? And what were you thinking? And you wish that you had the ears you have now. You wish that you would have heard the way you were singing and said, yo, take a step back. You don't need to sing so loud and so hard and with that weird British accent. Like, don't do that. But that sounds good, to your 13-year-old, 14-year-old self. You sound awesome.
Well, I used to work at this taxidermy job. My job was to do the finishing. So I'd have to make the lips and the nose, the eyes, and paint the fur wherever it was damaged. So I learned a lot of things that way.
We were both in culinary school, and then we were both working in restaurants. And so eventually what happened is Mary Sue was in Paris, I was in the south of France, and one night in Paris,
2 bottles of wine.
2 bottles of wine, and you know, there was a big rainbow over, you know, the city, and we decided drunk, we should open up a restaurant, and we didn't know where. Should it be Houston or, you know, Denver or
I
Chicago?
heard Phoenix was good.
Yeah, but we ended up, you know, saying we thought we'd do it in LA. But, you know.
No, we ended up saying,
was,
let's go home and try to make some money.
Yeah.
When I started cooking, there were no celebrity chefs. You know, I went to chef school in 1976, 1977. I was one of 2 women in a class of 100. Hi, girls. At a trade tech school on the south side of Chicago. This whole life that has happened was not part of my dream. I was going to make enough money to live by cooking.
You know, it's interesting. I don't know that I ever think about, oh my God, aren't we lucky? And on the other hand, I think, you know, it's all about the right place, the right time, in some ways. You know, starting out as women in the kitchen in the 70s, you know, maybe I was there at the beginning of a change happening, or maybe we were part of the change happening.
Chance played a big part in the, you know, breakthroughs that I did have. You know, Election was a book that I couldn't get published. And what I read from the Wishbones at a writers' conference, and there was a screenwriter in the audience who thought that, you know, there might be a movie in the Wishbones. And as a result, she called some friend of hers who were producers, and they called me about the Wishbones, and I wasn't done. I said, but I have this other unpublished book. And I was sort of embarrassed when I was talking about it, because for a writer, an unpublished book is a failed book. But they were actually very much intrigued, because what that meant was nobody else in Hollywood had seen it. You know, it's possible that, you know, good things would have happened for me. But you know, the making of the movie Election was, I think, responsible for my career moving to a whole different level, just for me having a kind of public profile. And I look at that now as being something that could easily have gone another way. That book could still be in my drawer.
So I went down a path of traditional industrial design and started the design consultancy with my roommate, Scott Robertson. So one night, there's a knock on the door, and this woman, lovely woman, says, Jose's working here, right? Because he left his keys. And I was like, oh yeah, thanks for bringing it by. And she introduces herself. She says, my name's Cawley Atwood. I have to ask you, I see a bunch of helmets around here. Do you design these? I said, yeah, my business partner Scott and I, we've been doing helmets for quite some time. She says, would you be interested in working with us on helping develop some stuff for a movie that we're doing? I was like, yes. You don't even have to tell me what it is. Yes, I'll do it. And the movie was Minority Report, and it was basically Tom Cruise's helmet and parts of the suit, the jetpack mainly.
For me, the first time we were in American Vogue, that was really exciting. And there are always these funny goals that we'll have for ourselves, like when we got into Barney's, and we're selling at Barney's now.
The first time that we saw someone walking down the street wearing our clothes was actually in Paris, outside the Louvre. So it was exciting to see someone who we clearly didn't know, just wearing our clothes and looking incredibly chic in it.
I mean, I was just so excited to see someone in the clothes. So yeah. Like, it's ours, it's ours. I don't know how they got it. They obviously bought it.
You know, there were people who had the trust to invite me. I don't know how it is that Elise Goodman thought that I could be trusted to do her house, but you know, That is an incredible thing. If she hadn't trusted me, I mean, where would I be? So, we all have to look at those people who had the faith at a certain point in time and say they were the turning points in our work.
I would describe Huma's work as a kind of very complex
My style, I would say, is intuitive, it's expressionistic, and it's raw. I don't think one should completely base one's work and whatever one is doing on what the response is going to be. Because then I think you're being careerist, and I don't think that's healthy, in terms of being creative.
Anything that we love, we just put on the menu.
You'd walk out that kitchen door or look out the window in the kitchen, you could see all the customers, you'd go over and talk to them and say, I know you don't think you're a tongue fan. You don't like to eat tongue.
Really?
But wait till you taste this.
My experience is that a certain idea grabs a hold of you, and you have to write that one. And it doesn't matter if it's going to disappoint somebody else or scare somebody else. It's not like I have 5 ideas, I'm going to pick the most commercial one or the least commercial one. It's like I just have one idea at any given moment, and that's what I'm going to have to explore. And all I have is some sense that I've done it before. There's something here, and I'm going to hunt it down and see what it is.
There's so much gray area out there in life, and I don't know if it's because I'm overthinking things or not thinking hard enough, but everything from global warming to immigration to gun control, I mean, you can really see both sides on these, But a good cartoon doesn't equivocate. A good cartoon just lays it down on the line and says, this is how it should be.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing for us is we're not trying to design for everyone. What we're trying to do is have a strong aesthetic that certain women relate to, and that we can have a customer base, but at the same time, it is really particular. It has its niche. So I think in that way, certainly we're on the creative side, and that we want to please ourselves and women we're inspired by, and a certain kind of woman, but not everyone.
A more important thing than originality would be identifiability. Like when somebody listens to a piece of music, they know it's by you, as opposed to some other guy. It has sort of a personal voice of some kind.
The reason that my games have this very simple visual aesthetic is that for most people, and for myself included as a game player, the focus of video games, is the graphics, right? That's what drives the sales of the latest, greatest games. My work is kind of a reaction to that. It's supposed to make you think about the fact that actually graphics aren't really the most important thing here. The most important thing is what you're doing in the game. I mean, everybody's had the experience where they sit down to play a game with amazing graphics, and after an hour or so, that delight over the graphics fades. So with my games, you don't even have to wait for that to fade. You just, it's already faded out for you.
If you have people that have been continuously working a problem for 20 or 30 years, and kind of pushing it along, I mean, they may advance it, but you're also you will benefit by having some orthogonal thinking from somebody that is looking at it new. And I think we took one look at what people normally do when they try and see single cancer cells. The thing you think of is, okay, I need a microscope. And that's what all the biologists would do. And I think because neither of us were that person, it gave us the opportunity to think, well, I don't really need a microscope. We can do it differently.
Very unexpected to have a window on the ceiling. The other issue is that the ceiling is reflective, as you can see. Now that creates a kind of weighty quality. It gives it a kind of heaviness, a strange presence. Someone else once said to me they weren't sure they could be living here. It felt oppressive. I found that very exciting.
I was walking to my apartment and I passed a Kmart. And I was trying to come up with an idea on the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was falling apart, you know, at the time. And so I came up with this, two policemen standing in Red Square and one saying to the other, I don't know about you, comrade, but some of these reforms are happening a little too quickly for me. And instead of K-Mart, I changed it to K-Marx. So the very simple fact that there was a Kmart sign right across the street from my apartment inspired something, you know? So you never know where it's going to come from.
For me, I get my inspiration from...
I was inspired by...
We were inspired by
the Flatfish and Picasso.
Jackson Pollock.
Blown up bodies.
The Rapture.
Sex stuff.
Politics.
Anxiety.
The quadrate bone from a macaw.
I get my inspiration from street vendors. I love the communication. I oftentimes, not always, will come up with some dish that someone has made, and I take the taste. It may not be the perfect dish itself, but the flavor profile, the idea of it is so, for me, just spectacular that I just think that is an inspired dish. I tend to think those street vendors are often doing a dish that someone's grandmother did, and then they've translated and put it on a little cart on the street, and you taste this dish, it's like, okay, that is genius.
Well, I'd say usually, throughout the season, we're just looking at things that we're inspired by, and we'll have some talk. Like this time was kind of great because it was like, I'm really inspired by those gloves that Ted was making with NASA using all this new technology. Flora was like, yes, that was exactly what I was inspired by. So it kind of starts with the conversation, then directly into materials.
Yeah, the material is inherently creating it. You are creating the shape and the texture, all from just one small thread. So it can become anything, really.
I got inspired by the Don't Tase Me Bro video. I've had some experiences with, abuse of police power and so on, and so has my wife, and we've talked about these things a lot. We're, sort of people who are generally somewhat scared of the police. And so the Don't Tase Me Bro video was like, most people think of it as a joke or whatever, but to me, I saw it and it was incredibly moving. So I made a game called Police Brutality about trying to figure out what you would do in that situation. You can't just run up to the police and get yourself beat down, right? So it's a game that puts you in that situation where somebody is being, brutalized by the police, and you're an audience member. What can you do to organize the other audience members in a nonviolent way, potentially, to prevent the police from taking this person away?
It's a true story that my mom thought I'd committed suicide because she couldn't find me in the house. And I have had problems with depression, but I've never been somebody who's attempted suicide. So she called my sister and said, Ray's disappeared, and I'm just worried she's killed herself. And then she went on to leave on my sister's machine, and I've got a hair appointment in town, which is just hilarious.
Sarah, listen, I'm trying to switch my mani-pedi with Julie, but you know, with the funeral coming up, your sisters did. And
At one point, I had this very clear idea that you would have this kitchen in the center and that you would ascend the spiral stair and have a private way to get into the rear bedroom. It's fantastic. But one day, when they were pulling the house with the come-along, they had to take off the whole back of the house, literally take off the entire back facade. And I saw the lilac tree. That was the moment. It was an utterly transformative moment. I realized that the whole first floor had to just stay empty because it is literally telescoping a view. The whole house was a kind of view-finding device for that tree. That was fantastic.
I went to a dark place for Star Trek because J.J. described the big red creature, the opening mouth. He says, I want that thing to be so off-putting. Scary, but not because it's got sharp teeth and it's going to eat you, but because it's just nasty. It looks like if it dribbled on you or if you smelt its breath, that would just, turn you. And I thought, okay, I need to make the most disgusting mouth possible, the most offensive orifice possible. Orifices, disgusting. Onto Google, and I found the nirvana of vulgarity, and that was a prolapsed anus. So I gathered a bunch of images, and I wanted to sell JJ on this with biological reference. And I said, JJ, you wanted the most vulgar looking mouth. My inspirations were a prolapsed anus. He's like, stop right there. You don't need to show me. I don't want to hear any more about it. You do what you got to do to make it off-putting, but I really don't want to see what I think you're about to show me.
I like B movies a lot. I like television a lot. I also like science fiction and horror. I like the storylines behind them. I forget the name of the movie, but at a certain point in the scene, I think it's a teenager or a young man who gets blown up, and then all that's left is like these high-top sneakers with just the ankles, which are bloody, sticking out.
My wife died from cancer, and during that time, I just decided that I was going to change my career. I'm very driven by the kind of the emotional part of working on cancer. And so for me, I didn't question whether we could do this or not. I knew that we had to do it.
My sister was deaf. And because she couldn't hear, now when I do work, I always, always, always look at it with the sound off. Because, first of all, that's how she would have had to see it. And it tells me whether, is the story being told? Does it make sense? A lot of times the music enables you to sort of tries to tell you everything. But I have to do it so someone who couldn't hear it could understand.
Everyone thinks that editorial cartooning is fun, and it is. It's a lot of fun, but there's a lot of stress involved, because every day you got to fill up a blank sheet of paper with a cartoon. At the end of the day, you have to have something, If you're not happy with it, it doesn't matter. It has to go on the paper the next day.
The Independent Game Festival was coming up, and the deadline was coming up for the festival. I wanted to submit something to that. I knew that. And these deadlines kept getting closer and closer, and I was like, oh, I still don't have an idea. Sort of know what I want to make a game about, but I don't really have a design. So I went out into the woods, actually, with my notebook and a book of philosophy that I've been reading that was sort of inspiring in terms of the themes I wanted to tackle. And by the end, I had a complete game design, so it worked, I guess.
Sometimes you just gotta wait on things. Like, it just doesn't come naturally. I mean, some people go, oh, you can force something, I've got a deadline, so I'm gonna make this thing by that time. But, I guess, yeah, I haven't been like that. I've been more like, an idea slowly percolates, and then, I work on it for a couple of years. Yeah.
when I do procrastinate, it's more when I have not resolved the work. But I mean, it's not like I procrastinate for hours at a time or days or anything like that. But I do like to, sometimes not do anything.
It's not procrastination. I don't put things off until the very end. It's just that when you get close to the very end, much like a runner, you're not going to sprint all the way through. You just can't sustain. But at the very end, that's when you start picking up the pace.
I very rarely have the experience that I hear so many songwriters say in this, and it's not a cliche, but it really seems to be something that happens for people, this idea that you wake up with melodies in your head, or that you are walking down the street and this bolt of inspiration hits you and you have to like get it down. And I've never been like that. I labor for what feels like an eternity to get even the smallest amount of work done. And it's strange because I know Tegan's process so intimately, and hers is the opposite. Like, she's definitely someone who will sit down, scratch out some lyrics, put a chord progression together, and then she'll send it to me like 3 hours later, and she's just like, done, I'm at the movies, and I went to go to the amusement park, and got my hair done, and I'm just like laboring over like the smallest detail.
I once had a grad school teacher who said, the secret to being prolific is just, banging out that first draft. Don't look back, don't censor yourself, just write and write and write. It struck me as really good advice, but I was never able to take it. I write the way, a snail makes a shell. I just secrete a little bit and I kind of live inside of it.
It's done when the deadline says you're done. That's really the only time when you know you're done.
So we got 3 today.
Okay.
All right, now this one.
Dog tags?
Yeah, dog tags. And 10th anniversary is 10 anniversary. Do you know about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
You think that's good?
Yeah.
Okay. Originally I just showed 1 set of dog tags, but then I added more around it. I don't know, to show more.
But it's not 10 years.
Today is the 10th anniversary. Like,
we didn't get into Afghanistan until after 9/11, which was 2001.
Yeah.
It was December of 2001. So it wasn't 10 years. So you're right.
Yeah. No, because you're thinking of 2003 with Iraq. So yeah. So and this one, California is this down on his luck, cash-strapped guy who sold the fairgrounds for 120 million.
That might work as a local one for Sunday.
Okay.
I still like this one best.
Okay. Good. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
So what just happened?
Well, my Afghanistan cartoon bit the dust because it's the beginning of the 10th year, but it's not the 10th anniversary. I read news sites this morning on the internet which said 10th anniversary of Afghanistan war, which were incorrect, and those threw me off. And then when I paused for a minute and I thought about it, I went and checked, and it's the 9th anniversary, so it doesn't work. It's the beginning of the 10th year, but it's the 9th anniversary. So then my backup idea was one on a local topic involving the sale of land, and that deal has fallen through. So I can't use my backup idea either. This is when we hit the panic button and come up with anything we can.
What time of day is it right now?
It's 4:22, and my idea has to be done by about 6, and I have no idea what I'm going to draw. This is a 2-panel cartoon. The first panel, we see the actual Gulf spill here, this big black blob, and then we see the hand here, which represents the government, holding this happy face, oily splotch over the big, ugly black oil splotch. And now I have less than an hour to ink it, but I'm happy with it, and we'll use it for tomorrow.
I love working together. I always think that what we create as a team is better than what anyone creates by themselves, solo.
When I first saw Cloverfield, that was the first film that for me felt like I was seeing my efforts realized on screen, and it was pretty stellar, the sensation. But seeing The Banshee so incredibly, I mean, Cloverfield is not about the creature. You're not daylight focused on details. The Banshee, daylight, camera's on it. It's locked off at points, and you're seeing an eyeball up close. It was so beautiful and alive, and the honor of being involved with so many talented people that took a concept and made it so bloody fantastic was, I was holding back the tears. I really was.
It's great to have two. So I oftentimes feel like Alexa is my editor and I'm hers.
In some ways, it's then you don't feel that same feeling of like the lonely, tortured artist because we have each other.
I didn't worry at that point because, we had an application, we had some data, we had momentum.
But I was worried.
I wasn't.
Working with other people, like sometimes that really will like push you and challenge you and make you sort of feel like you're stretching the boundaries of what you do and like your skills or your skill set or whatever. And but I forget what your original question was.
What happens is that at rehearsal or whatever, a bunch of musicians come up to me. Occasionally it's, this is too hard, I can't play this. And my usual response is, what can you play that sounds kind of similar? I'm not going to say, this is the way it must be done. If they can't do it, it makes no sense. They'll just fake it anyway, and then, I'll be known as the guy who writes music that's too hard to play.
And what time is that in?
Let's see. 1 bar of 5/8, and then 1 bar of 4/8, and then 5 bars of 5/8, and then 1 bar of 4/8, then 1 bar of 3/8, then 1 bar of 5/8, then 2 bars of 7/8, then 2 bars of 5/8, and then 1 bar of 4/8, then 2 bars. Okay, whatever. It changes a lot.
It's interesting the responsibility that you should have as a designer developing stuff up front is you got to make it cool, because if you create some schlock and then it goes to someone who's going to have to sit with your design that you just like crapped out in an evening, they're going to be sitting on it for a year, detailing, animating, lighting. So if you do something that's as good as you possibly could muster, it's going to show, and people are going to get it and go, oh, I'm engaged now. I'm going to have a lot of fun polishing this, making it that much better.
I then would watch Little Children and see, Kate Winslet's face sort of fills in for, dozens of pages. It's like what she can do in terms of a kind of, in the moment emotional reaction is so expressive. If you can get past that defensiveness and that sense of, I own this is my baby, stay away, you'll get all these people doing things that you can't do.
I have no problem in giving that last minute trust. I mean, really, it's silly not to. You can't do anything about it. Even if you stood up and ran around naked, you would not stop the show.
Buildings are absolutely collective social artifacts. They cannot simply accede to the will of a single person. That's not what they are. I've often used the metaphor that once the construction has begun, it's a little bit like the Titanic. And you can put every effort into turning it. It's, just the force of movement will force it into the iceberg. It's going. Well, I don't know toward what, but it's definitely going to, it's going. It's beyond your control.
The fact that I don't work well with other people might be something that might hinder me in some ways, right? Because there's just certain things I can't tackle, or I just automatically weed out ideas that are, too big or involve, too many resources. Or I know, I basically, when I approach a video game design and I have an idea, and I actually set out to make it, I know that I can make it. I know about how long it's going to take. I would never set out to make something that I couldn't make on my own, or that would take me 3 years or 5 years. So I guess that's because that's partially because I don't work well with other people, and I'm not really interested in working with other people.
Anywhere between 30 and 50% of the cancer surgeries need to be repeated because they don't get all the cancer. So the idea was a device that could be used by a surgeon to detect cancer cells during surgery down to the single cancer cell, so that they're sure to remove all the cancer, which is unprecedented.
That's the vision that David has, which is a huge, huge problem. In my mind, it's almost an impossible vision. A year ago, I wasn't sure at all that we could overcome any of the technical challenges, and that's where there was more angst about, am I wasting my time? Is this going the right direction? Do I know enough to even solve these problems?
So I get kind of jealous of me. People are so confident, they have a relationship, and they're like, we just met, we both knew. We just both knew. So you guys never fight about anything? Oh, he doesn't like onions. So you never had any issues you had to work through with like a fucking workbook? If I were you, I'd watch out for red flags. Oh, okay. But what if I'm like a flag factory that only manufactures giant red
flags? When I first met Julia Child, she invited us to be on a panel of women chefs up in Monterey, and I remember walking on stage with her, and I didn't know, I had a little wireless mic on, and I thought I was being electrocuted by little, AAA batteries, but I had never had an anxiety attack before.
I actually do not find performances too helpful because I'm rather nervous about what I have to do afterwards or beforehand, so I'm not really concentrating on it wholly. And also there are all these people around. There's the stress of not knowing whether or not they'll make mistakes, which is why I prefer to listen in my own home from an archival recording.
There's nothing less creative than being like 18 years old and so scared and terrified and like in these experiences that you're so completely incapable of like actually, it was mostly just a test of like not failing every single day, and it was like this terrifying time in our lives. And then we got Letterman on top of it and we felt so unworthy.
I got time to wonder, to waste and to whine.
But when I come to you, it seems like I just can't
find the time.
And Tegan and I would all we thought about was getting off stage and like going back to a hotel and crying and eating. Like we were so scared most of the time that it was so impossible to enjoy those experiences.
It's the pendulum swing back and forth. There's some days where I just have these mini panic attacks. Will I be revealed for the fraud that I am? And then other days, it's like, people are gonna really love this cartoon.
When I'm having a bad day, as an artist, as a designer, it's a bad day. You know, I go home and I'm truly upset. I'm miserable. I'm depressed. That what's wrong? Why can't you get it together today? And then the counter to that is I'll have a good day drawing, designing, sketching, sculpting, and I'm in a good mood. And I think, am I manic?
Because there's this moment when you're dreaming of fantastic success, and then there's this next moment where you're accepting reality and just figuring out how can I stay alive.
I was doing my hilarious comedy joke stories on stage at the Detroit Comedy Castle when a gentleman stood up in the front row and said, "I'm so fucking bored. I'm so sick of you and your voices. Why don't you bring the other guy on?" I thought, I completely agree with your level of frustration, sir.
It's hard because sometimes it feels so scary on stage, and so it feels like a hostile environment. So sometimes I go angry, which I don't want to do. And it doesn't work for my act either, because it's like, oh, why did this sweet, nice lady become, now she's telling us, asking if there's a curfew at the whorehouse. Why did she turn on us? She seemed so nice.
There will always be criticism, but I feel sometimes you can read it and learn from it, and sometimes you can read it and take it too personally.
The hardest thing is to try to be objective and see, if there's truth to it. Because at the same time, you believe in what you're doing. So, sometimes someone will criticize something, and I'm like, well, you know what? I just really believed in that. So if they don't like it, that's fine.
I have no interest in writing for the critics, basically. They're not my target audience. If they want to criticize, they're free to do that. I suppose I do write a lot of pieces to prove things to myself.
Yes, I have been stung by criticism, but I haven't been killed by criticism. I take it as an opinion. And I tell this to my dancers and people I work with all the time. Don't let anyone, anyone, make you feel less about yourself.
I really do feel like the crucible that made me a writer was those years when I wrote 3 books. And there was some period where I couldn't get them published. And what I would do when I got the rejection was I would go for a run at Prospect Park.
Go running.
I'm going to go take a jog.
Climbing a mountain.
Bike rides.
And
really, I kind of had this mantra, just like, fuck them. I can do this, and, they'll see some, it's embarrassing to say it, but I needed to burn off the anger and the sadness that came with, really trying to do something and not getting anywhere.
I was walking with the ghost. I said, please don't insist. I was walking with the ghost. I said, please don't insist. No matter which way.
I can remember certainly with a song like Walking with a Ghost, like people feeling strongly that they liked it, and then other people feeling strongly that they did not like it. And there were definitely questions about whether it should make the album, and that seems, of course, absurd to people now because it was certainly the song that helped Tegan and I establish ourselves. Like, we had sort of like a bona fide hit on alternative radio hit. And that song, it almost didn't make the record. But I just think sometimes when something has a really strong response, whether it's good or it's bad, generally that it's worth sort of investigating it further.
I mean, it's interesting, other people's interpretations. Obviously, everybody is going to relate in a different way, and that's how it makes it interesting. The most important thing is that, a person doesn't just walk by it.
And people would say, Little Children, what a, fun and fizzy book, what an effervescent treat. And it's a book about sexual transgression and a pedophile and a vigilante, and families exploding. And it, I was just struck by how you know, your own sense of who you are is often not mirrored by other people's experiences.
I did a Father's Day cartoon last year, and it showed a father with his kids. I think I drew 3 kids, a little boy on his shoulders, and he was holding hands with one boy, and then there was a little girl kind of bringing up the rear, and the caption was, "Not all heroes wear capes." Very simple. But I got 2 or 3 angry calls on that cartoon. One, the person said, don't you know that we have an overpopulation problem on this planet, and you drew this man with 3 children? You know, I didn't tell him that I had 5 kids of my own.
You got the skylight?
I'm seeing you. I've got the skylight. I've got the ellipse.
Is the skylight kind of dramatic still?
It sure is.
All right.
Welcome to my studio.
This is my little office.
This is the chemistry lab.
And I literally usually get inside of my closet.
This table, when I first moved into the studio 4 years ago now, was supposed to be a drawing table, but it gradually became a table where I would kind of like walk into the room, and if I had something, I'd just kind of start putting it on this table. Like this is a skull. It's actually the bottom part of a skull.
Sketching can happen anywhere, but as far as tangibly making things, it has to be done here. We have mannequins, we have the sewing machine. This is an amazing pattern making table, but I do not have something like this at home.
Exactly. Living in New York too, it's such a premium on space, so it's great to have it completely set up here to make things.
I'm actually not that fond of cities. They're very noisy. I'd probably prefer to live out like in the middle of nowhere in a rural area. You know, get a cottage on Walden Pond and play the flute at night or something.
What I love about cooking at home is that I can, my creativity sort of is limited by what's available, because I have, it's like a responsibility. When suddenly the eggplant is ripe, I have to find something to cook with it, and it has to go with my meal that day or within a few days. So it's really fun. It's really fun. Tomatoes, peppers, I have a raspberry patch over here.
Oh, I don't have any of the normal accoutrements. In fact, the idea that I even have such a thing as this, a television, is kind of crazy. I mean, this just happened recently, and I don't know how to use it really. I mean, I don't use it. I mean, mentally, I can't. I try to watch the news now and then when I'm sitting here at this tiny desk, but that's about all. I don't know what to do about furnishing the space. It's keeping it empty that really is what I would want to be doing.
First of all, if you hear any noises, that is my family. They live with me. I know, if that is my family. There's 4 dogs who are staying with me. I'm kind of like a drop-in center for latchkey pugs.
I try to figure out a way to combine the 2 things I love, the dancing and painting. I would also notice in ballet class, like doing things like rond de jambes or dégagés, it would actually leave a pattern on the floor, like this. That's a pirouette. That's a little simple turn like that. This is like a chasse, which is like that.
Over here is a Little League photo from 1970. Garwood Little League, and my dad is on the left there, and I'm kneeling. And then back there is the Oscar class picture, where you can see my head poking out somewhere near Will Smith. So like that, I have my Little League team picture and my Oscar nominee team picture.
Over years, I've been acquiring things like this here ostrich leg. The booby girls are gifts. Dolphin anatomy. That's not something you easily come across. That's from a dead crocodile. These little animals for their little play farm, I find these extraordinarily useful. Everyone should have one of these. And things come off.
hope there's some pretty pictures too. That was gorgeous where you could see that whole. And can I see that view again? Don't shake it.
Yeah.
That's my favorite. God dang it, that is gorgeous. Oh man.
I once, a few years ago, heard 50 Cent giving an interview after that first song of his, which was a very big hit. And he was being interviewed, and he's, young, and he's just, fresh and everything. And he said, no, I'm just going to be really focused, and that's what I have to do, So that really resonated with me.
Part of my succeeding to the point where I'm at now is based on really working freaking hard. It's kind of like what you don't have in a skill, you make up for in just like brute force.
When I became a chef, I didn't like oysters, raw oysters. I just found them, like, I would try to eat one and I would end up gagging. But because I was so invested in becoming a chef, I wanted to be a chef. So I decided every time I was confronted with an oyster, I would eat it. I'd make myself eat it and chew it.
I mean, with the opening of Street, I was like 18 hours a day in the kitchen, on the line, in front of the wood-burning oven that was like 1,000 degrees. I mean, it's the first time in like 20 years I lost 10 pounds.
Jeff, can you just shoot the floor here?
The well-worn floor.
It's a sewing area.
I've dated people who it's just like, they might as well just move out at the beginning of my songwriting process because I'm unlikable, I'm difficult, I'm quiet. It's like I'm on my vision quest in the desert and I'm starving, and do not bring me a snack plate.
I feel like my time in life is rather limited, and I want to make the best use of it that I can and get the most enjoyment out of that time as I can. I don't multitask. I really just focus on one thing, kind of become a monomaniac.
If my wife were here, she would tell you that, when we decided to get married, I was an unpublished writer, a part-time composition teacher. I was really not a great husband material at that point, I think. And I was trying to kind of comfort her parents, and I said, well, look, if I'm, 30 years old and I haven't published a book, I will apply to law school. And time came and I was 30 years old and I hadn't published a book. And the day after my birthday, her father called and said, where are you going to apply? And I just realized, at that moment, I said, look, I can't go to law school. I've got to do this. And I think every artist has to go all in at some point. You've got to just say, I'm doing this, to save my life right now.
Most editorial cartoonists are news junkies. So we're always trying to follow the news. We're always trying to read the news. We always want to know where our next idea is going to come from. And because of that, our minds are always working. If my wife sees me staring off into space at the dinner table, usually I'm coming up with a cartoon idea.
I guess I'd say I think I'm present, but I know I'm not.
Yeah, it's hard to be in the moment, yeah. That's a problem. I wish I could be in the moment.
Do you sleep well?
Not that well. Irregularly and not that well.
Do I sleep well? On and off. Sometimes when there are periods of things are not working or there's a problem, I have sometimes problems sleeping, but often that's when solutions come.
I came up with this idea for a two-player interactive storytelling game, and that was called Sleep is Death.
It is very challenging for me to turn off my brain in any part of my day. Before bed, lying in bed, brain is going, it's terrible.
Now that the psychological world has come up with all these labels for everybody's disorder, whether it's obsessive compulsive or, the attention deficit or, Asperger's, I have told a lot of my son's friends that, you know, oh, I've got OCD, and I say, look, buddy, you know, you can put that to work for you. You can take that and you can put it into, you can channel it right into whatever you're passionate about. You're going to be fine.
I don't suppose I do turn it off. I'm not sure there's any way to. I'm not sure I'd want to, even if I could. Yeah, like I do time my footsteps while walking. The footsteps stay even but they're measuring out 7 quarters. The rate is 100 to the quarter. So.
I feel that the most interesting people are interested people, and I felt when we worked for Karl Lagerfeld, that was something that was really notable about him, is that he's always interested to try new things and looking and exploring and reading and voraciously taking in the world.
Should I slow down a bit?
For me, it would be awesome. Yeah.
I was probably 24 or 25 years old, and the record that we had put out, So Jealous, finally, for the first time, like, we got a review in Rolling Stone, and they called it one of the best records of the year, and, you know, we did all these tours internationally, and the White Stripes, I remember, covered Walking with a Ghost, and we went on tour with the Killers, which was like this huge band at the time. This is the record where I'm not going home after every tour and, like, just casually surfing to, like, colleges and universities that I might want to attend, like, if I had to, you know, whatever. It was on that record that I can remember thinking, like, this is totally what we're supposed to be doing.
I've won the Pulitzer 2 times. The first time, it was my first year, my first full year as an editorial cartoonist. So I didn't expect to win. I mean, I was not, I entered, of course, but I sent my cartoons in January, and a couple weeks later they called back and they said, you forgot to put the dates when these ran on here. And I'm thinking to myself, oh man, I'm such an idiot. They probably think I'm the biggest moron. But a couple weeks later, I won. They called and said I won.
One of those very sort of special moments was one time at Border Girl at Las Vegas. We got a call, I was here in LA, got a call from President Clinton's people that he wanted to eat at Border Grill, Las Vegas. And it was just a dinner for 18 people. And he walked into the room, you know, he had on jeans and a navy blue sport jacket and a white shirt. And that truly was like, okay.
I did have a moment on set of Star Trek. They were shooting 2 scenes, Romulan drill and the snowy landscape. And they got the Ritters going, felt like 90 miles an hour, fake snow everywhere. When that was all done, I go back to my trailer and I think, this is my job, and it's the job, wait a minute, that I always wanted to do as a kid. Holy crap, I'm exactly what I dreamed of being.
Well, the show at MoMA, it's a show of work that they acquire from, you know, contemporary artists. I was lucky that they decided to include my prints in the collection this time. But I have my own wall there, which is, I went to look at it and I was a bit weirded out because, you know, you're not expecting to be in, you know, the Museum of Modern Art and, you know, I mean, I know I was looking at my own work, but I was kind of almost felt like I was somebody else.
You know, when you walk into, you know, MGH, Center for Cancer, you know, and you're meeting with top breast cancer surgeons, and they're saying, we've been waiting for this. There's nothing can touch that.
A success would be, I'm not sure. I mean, whatever I think is a success, whatever pieces of music that I want to listen to again, I can't really describe it in words very well because, at least without getting too theoretical, just because, you know, it's music, it's not words.
I'm sure contentment exists because there are moments when I feel so satisfied and happy, and it's a feeling of just like, you know, warm and just absolutely content. But that's about, you know, 0.001% of the time.
I think it's like you can be happy, but I don't think it's necessarily being content. You still want to push and change what you're doing. You still want to improve. It's like you can't just be like, well, that was great, we'll just do the same thing. Like, now we're fine.
In fact, I feel fashion abhors that idea.
I think there's maybe a lot of things that I still have yet to try artistically, which will hopefully be incorporated into the work as it goes along. The fact that I've been able to show at these places, I think the goal would be that maybe I'd like to show there again.
I think I have like an adolescent's fantasy life. You know, I'm constantly in the course of writing a novel, imagining I'm writing the glowing reviews for the book. You know, you just have to kind of have this, you know, ridiculous fantasy that what you're doing is important, that you're actually going to be able to pull it off, that other people are going to care. I mean, if you look at it from a logical perspective, you really shouldn't do it. It's a waste of your time, and it's going to break your heart. So only people with a delusional faith in themselves will be able to get through that, because all the discouraging stuff is absolutely true.
I'm still a humble guy, really just trying to build something in a studio that makes sense and that encourages and inspires people to be good and do good things and to see the world differently and to challenge themselves and try and be better. I'm one of many, many, many people on the earth. That's it.
People often get hung up on all the different things they need to do and learn and sort of where they need to go in life before they can do something. Like, oh, I'm gonna go through college and then I'm gonna do this and then I'm gonna do that, and finally I'm gonna be able to do what I wanna do, which is make video games or whatever it is. For so many things, I mean, I guess maybe if you wanted to practice medicine or something, you know, then you'd be breaking the law or whatever if you just went out and did it. But for so many things, the most important thing I feel is to just start doing it, right? What are you waiting for?
Please welcome the very funny Maria Bamford.
I think the most part of the showing up, that I just keep showing up, because I think it does take vulnerability to show up even when it isn't going well. Yeah, maybe my jokes aren't that great, or I'm not the youngest flower in the room. Yeah, enjoy the journey, enjoy the journey. Sorry.
I mean, and being enthralled with just the production of things that make no sense and that will be brought into the world to make sense only later, not knowing how or when, is very exciting.
I suppose on some level I feel a greater kinship with like architects and sculptors and the like than musicians, because I don't think of it so much as passion for composition as for creating worlds, basically.
You want to do cartoons that knock down the mighty and the powerful, knock them down a notch, and cartoons that help elevate people who don't have a voice. The goal is to just create cartoons that, I know this sounds highfalutin, but can change the world, can make the world a better place. Please don't end with that.